In the novel David Copperfield, Charles Dickens wrote, "My advice is never do tomorrow what you can do today. Procrastination is the thief of time." Welcome to UT Health San Antonio Wellbeing Wisdom Podcast, a dose of learning for healthier, happier lives, brought to you by the Office of Human Resources. I am your host, Tiffany Dale, and our topic today is overcoming procrastination. We are joined by Dr. Mary McNaughton Castle, a professor of clinical psychology at the University of Texas at San Antonio. She received her PhD from San Diego State University, University of California, San Diego Joint Clinical Doctoral Program. Her research interests include studying stress and coping in a media-intensive world and understanding the factors that contribute to college student success and well-being. She conducts research on stress and coping, has published in a variety of academic journals, and writes a regular blog for Psychology Today. She has a small clinical practice and volunteers as a disaster mental health specialist. Dr. McNaughton Castle is a recipient of the Piper Professor Award, which honors professors for their dedication to the teaching profession and for their outstanding academic, scientific, and scholarly achievement. She has also received the University of Texas Regents Outstanding Teaching Award, which recognizes those who serve students in an exemplary manner. She is a fellow of the University of Texas System's Academy of Distinguished Teachers. She is married to UTSA biology professor Erin Castle, has twin daughters who have moved out of the house, and a number of rescue cats who have moved in. Welcome, Dr. McNaughton Castle. Thank you for being here and sharing your well-being wisdom regarding procrastination and its impact on our mental, emotional, and physical health.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
We are delighted to have you here with us today, Dr. McNaughton Castle. To kick things off, please tell us a little about yourself, your professional journey, and your expertise in ways to overcome procrastination.
Thank you. Yes, as you noted, I'm originally from California, although my husband and I have been here in San Antonio since 1994, seeing a lot of changes at UTSA and now, of course, the merge with UT Health as well. I've always been interested in studying stress and coping. My master's degree looked at stress and immune function in rats, but I was always more interested in the ways that humans coped because of our language and our higher order thinking kinds of capabilities. So when I got my PhD, I was looking at stress in the caregivers of folks with Alzheimer's disease. And after we moved here to San Antonio, I started thinking about how rapidly life was changing and how the really sudden differences in the ways that technology and media impacted our life were influencing us. So I've spent a lot of time looking at how the pressures of modern life, the expectations, the deadlines that we experience because things have speeded up with technology, the media overload, all of those things are influencing our well-being and how we feel about ourselves and our lives. And one of the things that is very apparent is that we have more and more opportunity in this modern world. There's lots of things we can do, achieve, consume, enjoy, but that always sets up a time crunch. Whenever you choose to do one thing, you're having to decide not to do something else. And I think that will play into our discussion of procrastination today.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, most of us know that procrastination can impact our lives in negative ways. What are some of the costs to our physical, mental, and emotional health when we do procrastinate?
It's an interesting question because we don't do things in a vacuum. We usually procrastinate because there's a reason we don't want to do the task at hand. So we put it off, which can be rewarding in the short run. You're anxious about studying for the test or aggravated about having to do your taxes, and you put it off, and temporarily you feel better. But the longer effect is that you experience a buildup of anxiety or frustration or guilt as the deadline approaches and you haven't taken care of things. Oftentimes, close to the point when you have to have the project done, you start to experience things like not getting enough sleep, even some physical symptoms like an upset stomach or headaches. And of course, procrastinating can have really negative social effects. If the people you work with or the people in your family wanted you to get something done that you haven't, that may set up conflict. That can also lead to things like blaming yourself or feeling badly about yourself for not getting things done. But one of the things I want to emphasize today is that procrastination isn't really laziness, which is what a lot of us tend to think. If only I would be more motivated, have more energy, if only my spouse would take that more seriously. And the bottom line is that it's not that we're lazy about the task, it's that there's some reason we don't want to do the task, and so we're doing something else instead.
Okay. So if it's not laziness, and then most of us, in addition to that, have know that procrastinating is not a best practice to choose in our lives, why is it most of us do that anyway?
One common cause is perfectionism. A lot of times we procrastinate on tasks that we're not sure we know how to do well. Maybe we don't have enough information, enough experience, enough confidence. And we think, well, if I wait a little longer, I will have figured it out. I will have read enough articles. I will have done enough work on this to make it happen. So we're waiting to do it perfectly. And if you're enough of a perfectionist, you know nothing's ever done perfectly.
Mm.
So the deadline actually works as a way to break the perfectionism. If you wait until the night before something's due, it's no longer physically possible to make it perfect. So you kind of have an out. Well, I would have written it better if I'd had more time. So one reason that we procrastinate is to break that sense of I can't do it well enough by using the deadline. Another reason is we may often do sort of a cost benefit analysis. At this moment in time, I have a lot of things I need to do. I realize that that project, paper, whatever I'm procrastinating on is important, but right at this moment, maybe I need to take care of the kids, or I want to clean the house, or I haven't done something else. And so we'll go with the short term gratification, getting something done that maybe even is important to do. But what happens is that there will eventually come a time when the procrastinated project is in the forefront and we are running out of time on it. So there's sort of a short term versus delayed gratification issue going on with procrastination too. Can we do something small that'll make us feel accomplished, or should we do something that we're probably dreading or anxious about and it'll pay off in the end, but it's hard to do it right now? And that can sometimes kick into issues like our impulse control and our emotional regulation. A lot of students struggle. They know they need to study more for the classes that they don't do well in or that they don't like, but those are the classes that make them feel inadequate and anxious. So those are the very ones that they avoid because they don't want to feel those kinds of feelings. There are people who don't procrastinate a lot, and that tends to have quite a bit to do with your own personality. If you are very conscientious, then you're less likely to procrastinate. But if you're prone to depression and anxiety, then you might procrastinate more. So some of it is also knowing yourself and what your motives are.
Mm. Are there any benefits at all to procrastinating? And if there are, what are they?
I think so. If you're dreading something that makes you feel anxious, you know, you may not want to go to the dentist or do something that you know is going to be painful in the short run. And we're wired to avoid negatives. You don't keep your hand on the hot stove, you take it off. So in the short run, procrastination enables us to avoid discomfort or negative feelings. But what it also does is kind of back to the perfectionism place. It can give us an excuse for not getting the project done as well as we not could, but think we could. So as long as you've run out of time, you always have a way of saying, well, it wasn't my best effort, or I could have done something differently about it. There's something really hard for us as humans about trying our very best and being rejected. So one way to avoid that is to not actually try your best, to wait until the deadline gives you a little bit of a get out of jail card on that worry that you're not going to do it well. Sometimes we may procrastinate for other reasons. Rebellion is another reason that people procrastinate. If
Hmm.
it's a task that you don't think you should have to do or don't want to do, or someone else is forcing you to do it, there may be sort of a perverse kind of pleasure in waiting till the last minute, even though you're the one that might pay the price at the end. Again, I rarely say that people do things randomly. It's a cost benefit analysis. The question is, what are you trading off when you procrastinate versus trying the task sooner? I do laugh sometimes because a lot of us haven't tried the alternative. Students always tell me, I write best under pressure, or I can't study well until the night before. And I laugh and ask them, well, have you ever tried? Have you ever tried writing something over a period of time and checking to see if that's really the best way you write? Maybe if you had time to think about it, it would be better. So it can also almost become a habit that gets rewarded, because if you're able to pull it off, putting things off to the last minute, you really don't know what your other capacities are.
Do you find that that gives your students an aha moment?
Sometimes it does. It's kind of funny. I tell them what they need to do is set up their own artificial little deadlines along the way. So if you've got a 10-page paper due, then 2 weeks into the semester, have a deadline for yourself of getting all the articles together, and then a deadline for reading them, and a deadline for outlining them. So you have time to think about it. And honestly, some students have never tried that before, and they do find that they actually even enjoy the process when it's not as panicked. However, if you're really, really anxious about a project, starting earlier can sometimes just feel like you're giving yourself longer to worry. And so then addressing why you're so anxious about that project, what kind of expectations you're putting on yourself, can also be helpful.
So, staying along those lines, what recommendations do you have for those of us who want to stop procrastinating?
I think about all feelings, and I'm going to put in the motives for procrastination in here. Like I think about pain, they're a warning. When you say, I really, really don't want to start that project, it's easy to either act on that and not start, or to get hard on yourself and say, well, what is wrong with me? I think you need to look deeper and figure out, what is it that I'm worried about? What is it about the situation, the expectations, the people, the project? And maybe if I address those things, I will feel better about it. Sometimes it's because the project's ambiguous, or as I said, you don't feel like you're fully prepared to do it well. But we often want to just dismiss negative emotions and say, well, I shouldn't feel this way and I should overcome them. And you wouldn't do that with pain. If your ankle hurt, you wouldn't go to the doctor and say, I know my ankle shouldn't hurt. You would go in and say, my ankle hurts. I need to figure out why so I can fix things. And that's what we can do with procrastination, is think about why we're doing it and then try to address the underlying causes. Now, again, I said there's different underlying causes. Sometimes we really do resent a project or feel it isn't worthwhile, doing this report that nobody else is going to read. And that's a place where you can think about priorities and how much energy to put into something. And it's kind of an old joke, but not everything worth doing is worth doing perfectly. So maybe you can reduce the effort on projects that aren't going to be hugely impactful going forward. I sometimes say this to people about, preparing how your house looks or what other people are going to think about your house. Maybe it doesn't have to be perfectly clean for them to still like you. Is it your expectations that's setting that up? A lot of times it's fear. This one comes in often when you think about things like getting a checkup at the doctor or signing up for something where you might not be accepted. And so we will set ourselves up and say, well, it's going to be bad news, so I just don't want to deal with it. And at that point, again, rather than putting off the project, you really do need to think about what are the possible outcomes and the balance. Is it better to not be stressed about getting the mammogram, or would it be good to get the mammogram because regardless of the outcome, you'll either feel better or you'll have steps forward to deal with the problem? So that matters. And sometimes we procrastinate on things where it's really more of a social conflict. I bet we've all had something where we didn't feel it was really our role to do it. Why are we having to do this when our spouse or our work colleague or our boss or someone else could do it? And sometimes in that case, you have to think about whether the real problem is speaking up, standing up for yourself, or setting a boundary, thinking about it as maybe a task that isn't important for you to do. But especially for students, I always think that high achievers, most of us in academics in general, really struggle with the whole imposter syndrome, the idea that we aren't as smart or prepared or educated as other people. And so we're not going to do the project well enough. And that's a place where we have to really work on the idea that even academics isn't something you're born knowing how to do. You practice. You wouldn't go on the sporting field and say, well, if I can't swing the tennis racket, then I'm never going to play tennis. You go out and you practice a lot. So a lot of the projects we procrastinate on, if we could frame them as something that we are practicing, getting better at, working on, as opposed to something that we demand that we do perfectly right away, it wouldn't be quite as stressful. And then the second piece of that is asking for help, recruiting help. Do you have a lack of support or resources? Are there some skills you need to learn? Sometimes it isn't a matter of starting the project right away. It's getting the pieces together for the project, learning how to do it. I've had students just panicked about a paper, and I say, well, the librarians can help you figure out what databases to search and how to start on a paper and what the keywords are. And they always come back to me in shock, like, oh, it's so much easier when you know how to look through those things. So those kind of steps can matter too.
Sounds like there's a lot of factors involved, and I'm going to go ahead and ask this final question, but is it possible to completely eliminate procrastination in our lives? And if it is, why is that? And if not, why not?
I don't think so. The complexity of our lives is something that we mostly take for granted. In my stress management class, I actually have students go back and try to find out about their grandparents or great grandparents. Where did they live? What were their jobs? How many of their children survived? All kinds of questions. And then we compare their stressors to ours. And what inevitably comes out is that we aren't working as hard physically. Many, many of our relatives had agricultural and business and hard physical jobs. And we're doing more cognitive kinds of work. They had struggles to get enough food, raise their kids. Most of us are lucky enough to be struggling more with keeping up in modern life, maintaining our cars and our phones and pursuing our careers. But that sets up a different set of stresses, all the expectations, the time pressures, the competition. And if you just think about a daily life, you used to go to the bank and get money for the month, and now you have all your bills online. You got to remember every password. Doing that is aversive. There's just so many things in modern life that can be annoying and procrastination worthy. I don't think we'll ever completely get away from it. There are a couple things I just kind of wanted to add, though. Some of us are procrastinators, which is a new term that's creeping into the literature. And this is the idea that you start projects before you need to. Again, probably out of anxiety or but sometimes because you really want to do it. But often in procrastination, what happens is you start it early and then spend a lot of time obsessing, rewriting, losing focus. So it's worth thinking about what the optimal time is to start a project, not always starting it the minute you get it or the last minute.
Hmm.
And then something I have just recently been looking at is this idea of sleep procrastination. And we all know that we need enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night, to function well. But many of us don't get that. And we'll say, well, I was so busy, I stayed up late, I knew I had to get up. But what essentially happens is we stay busy up until our desired bedtime, doing the things that we feel like we have to do, making lunches, getting ready, getting our stuff together for the next day. And then when we could get in bed and go to sleep is when we start scrolling, reading, watching something on TV, sort of trying to steal a little bit of relaxation or leisure time from the day by procrastinating on going to sleep. And again, this is a good example of the model that happens in procrastination in general. We're not saying, oh, I know I don't need sleep. Feel fine tomorrow if I'm exhausted. But what we're saying is, right now at this minute, I feel good about doing this other thing. And so I'm just going to do it and put off the thing that I'm not ready to do. And it sets up a cycle. So maybe thinking a little bit about your patterns at night and whether you're have your schedule organized such that the only leisure time you have comes from that sleep time right at the very end, and whether there are any ways to change that. It's very ironic because throughout most of history, people struggled more with resources and money than time. Most people had a lot of time. They didn't have a lot of things. And in
Hmm.
modern life, we seem to be reversed. We have lots of stuff, but we don't feel like we have enough time to manage and use it all. And so it's kind of a paradoxical struggle.
Wow. That's, I'm thinking of many people in my lives that fit into that area of the lack of sleep. And I'm guessing, and you can obviously tell us more, that if we're putting off the sleep procrastination, would that feed more into um, the need for being perfect, and then that could result in some more anxiety? So there's another
Absolutely.
cycle building in there.
It just sets a spiral because the more tired you are, the more you have trouble with decision making, attention, concentration, managing your emotions. You know, we've all been there when you're exhausted and you're just trying to finish something and you start making mistakes.
Hmm.
So, you're tired because of all the things you have going on that kept you awake, and then you're not even doing things efficiently, and it becomes a spiral. And I say the same thing about procrastination that I say about time management in general, that it's not really a matter of getting a calendar and trying to get more things crammed into every day. That could be part of it, especially students first coming to UTSA from high school aren't always used to following the syllabus and having a calendar and planning. But for most of us, it's more an issue of values and priorities and really thinking about what projects we need to do, what ones we want to do, what we have to do, and making some choices. And that comes back again to not trying to do everything perfectly, indiscriminately, and being realistic even about our expectations about how good we have to be at anything for it to be acceptable. And of course, I could go on a whole different tangent about comparing ourselves to others in social media and why we keep raising those standards of what we think we have to do. But that's another whole topic.
That might be a great topic for us for a future podcast. I
I would
might be
love to.
reaching back out to you for that.
I would be happy to. I can. talk about this. Sometimes people say, how can you teach an entire 16-week class on stress and coping? And I am always saying, I could keep going. I can talk about it for a long time.
Very good. Well, this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation, Dr. McNaughton Castle. Thank you so much for joining us and making lives better by sharing your well-being wisdom.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me. Take care.
Take care.